Fola sat at her desk, sipping tea she could barely taste. Her phone buzzed again. Bank alert, $60,000 withdrawn. No message, no warning, no permission, just a hole in her savings. And her chest. She called him. He answered, laughing. "It's a surprise, babe. Trust me." She hung up and started planning a surprise of her own. Fola met Ghani at a tech expo, and from the first moment, he seemed full of dreams and charm. She had just launched a wellness app that was doing really well across the world. Ghani didn't have a job, but he spoke with passion. He told her he had big ideas, big plans. He just needed someone to believe in him. Fola, full of love and hope, decided to be that person. She believed that love meant growing together, so she helped him. She paid for his short courses to help him learn new skills. She cleared his debts so he could start fresh. And when he said they should plan for the future, she even opened a joint savings account, trusting him completely. To her, they were building a dream together. But what she didn't know was that Ghani wasn't investing in them. He was only investing in himself. In the beginning, Ghani was like a perfect boyfriend. He cooked for Fola, brought her small surprises, and always knew how to make her smile. He would proudly tell people, "This woman made me a man," and it made Fola feel special, like her love was really changing his life. Everything seemed so sweet, so real. She believed they were growing together, but slowly, things started to change. Ghani became distant. He started getting phone calls late at night, and when Fola asked who it was, he'd say, "Just business," or "Nothing important," and quickly changed the topic. He began going on trips without telling her the full story. One time, he said he was going to Ibadan for a job interview, but came back with a brand new phone and a story that didn't make sense. Fola's best friend noticed something wasn't right. She pulled Fola aside one day and said, "Be careful. I don't think he's building a future with you. I think he's building something behind your back." But Fola didn't want to believe that. She held on to the good memories, the sweet moments, the compliments, the meals he used to make. She told herself, relationships aren't perfect. Maybe he's just stressed. Every time doubt tried to creep in, Fola pushed it away with love. She thought loyalty meant standing beside someone, even when things were confusing. She believed that if she just kept supporting him, he'd come around, and they'd be back to the couple they used to be. But things only got worse. The warmth in Ghani's eyes started to fade. He no longer looked at her with the same love. He was always on his phone, always in a hurry, always somewhere else. But the final crack came when Fola received a bank alert. A huge amount of money, gone. No call, no message, no warning. Just a single bank alert showing that someone had taken what she'd worked so hard to save. In that moment, everything became clear. All the late-night calls, the sudden trips, the strange behavior. It wasn't stress, it wasn't love. It was betrayal hiding behind romance. Fola sat in silence, staring at the message on her phone. Her hands were shaking. Her heart wasn't just broken, it felt robbed. Fola was at work when her phone buzzed. She picked it up without thinking, expecting a normal message. But what she saw made her heart drop. $60,000 had been transferred out of her savings account. Her eyes widened. She blinked twice, thinking maybe it was a mistake. But the numbers didn't lie. $60,000, gone in one move. Her hands started to shake. She tried to call Ghani immediately. No answer. She texted him. Nothing. She tried again and again. Still no reply. She checked his location. Offline. His phone was off. His social media, silent. Ghani had disappeared like smoke in the air. No goodbye. No message. Just gone. And with him, all the money she had worked so hard to save. Fola wasn't just shocked. She felt invisible, like someone had pressed a delete button on her life. She wasn't just robbed. She had been completely erased. It felt like her heart had been taken too, not just her money. She sat in her office, trying to hold back tears, staring at her phone screen, hoping maybe there was some mistake. But deep down, she knew this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a bank error. This was betrayal, carefully planned, perfectly timed, and it hurt more than anything she had ever felt. The next morning, she went straight to the bank. She told the customer service officer what happened, and they started pulling up records. The account the money went into was new, but something strange showed up. Her name was still on the savings account. That meant the account was still shared. It hadn't been closed or changed. The transfer hadn't even needed a password. The staff checked deeper. That's when it hit her. The transfer had been done using biometric approval, her fingerprint. But how? She had never approved anything like that. Suddenly, she remembered. 2 nights ago, she had fallen asleep on the couch beside Gani. He had said he was staying up late to watch a show. That must have been the moment. While she was asleep, he had taken her finger and used it to unlock the app and move the money, quietly, secretly, coldly. Her chest felt tight. The man she trusted with her dreams, her time, her heart, had stolen from her while she slept peacefully beside him. That's when the truth finally hit her. Gani never saw her as a partner. He saw her as a tool. And now that he had gotten what he wanted, he didn't even have the courage to face her. Fola sat alone in her room, her phone in her hand, her mind racing. Gani was still gone. Her money was still missing. And every second that passed made the silence louder. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. She just needed answers. So she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She opened her cloud account and synced it with her phone. Maybe, just maybe, something would show up. Something he forgot to delete. As the files loaded, she held her breath. Most of it was normal. Screenshots, receipts, old videos. Then, in the middle of it all, a single image popped up. It was only half loaded at first, like it was trying to come back from the digital grave. But when it fully appeared, her heart stopped. It was Gani, in a tuxedo, standing beside a woman she had never seen before. They were holding hands like lovers, smiling at each other like they had the world in their palm. The background looked like a wedding venue, flowers, chairs, white ribbons. It was clear this wasn't some random photo. This was something big, something planned. Then she saw the caption under the photo. "Can't wait for Saturday. Everything's perfect." Her mouth went dry. Saturday? That was just 4 days away. 4 days from now, Gani, the man she had loved, trusted, and supported, was getting married. And not to her. Everything suddenly made sense. The missing money, the silence, the disappearing act. He hadn't just stolen from her. He had used her money to plan a wedding with someone else. The tuxedo, the venue, the dress. It was all paid for with the money she had saved for their future. Fola sat still, staring at the photo. Her heart was no longer broken. It was burning, not with sadness, but with a quiet fire. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stared at that screen. And a new plan began forming in her mind. If Saturday was going to be perfect for Gani, then she would make sure it was unforgettable, just not in the way he expected. She closed her phone slowly, wiped her tears, and stood up. She wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to call him. She wasn't even going to warn him. Revenge doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it arrives in silence, with a smile. And now she had 4 days to turn her pain into a masterpiece. Fola didn't waste time crying. She had already cried enough. Now her heart was clear, and her mind was sharp. She picked up her phone and made her first call. To her lawyer. She explained everything. The money, the fingerprint, the silent transfer. Her lawyer listened carefully and assured her they could take legal action. But Fola wasn't stopping there. She had more work to do. Next, she called the caterer listed in the photo she saw. She asked a few simple questions, like the bride's name and who made the payment. When she heard the answer, she just smiled. The name on the receipt, Heron Fola Adeyemi. Her own money had paid for the food that would be served at Gani's wedding. One by one, she made more calls. The event decorator, paid by Fola. The makeup artist, paid by Fola. The venue, yes, the large hall decorated with white and gold flowers, fully paid by her. Even the wedding dress, with its long lace train and pearl details, charged to her account weeks ago. Every detail of the wedding, from the chairs to the cake, had been made possible by her savings. Fola was not just shocked, she was amused. Gani didn't just betray her. He used her like a credit card and thought she'd never find out. But now that she knew everything, she had a choice. She could cancel it all and leave him humiliated on his big day. Or she could do something smarter. She chose smarter. She didn't cancel anything. In fact, she called a few of the vendors back and said she wanted to make some adjustments. The food, she upgraded the menu to something even better. The cake, she made sure it was double the size. The flowers, she asked for extra arrangements at the entrance. No one questioned her. After all, she was the one paying. Fola made sure everything looked perfect on the outside. But inside, she was planning something even better, something unforgettable. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't angry. She was calm, like someone preparing a surprise. And while Gani was thinking he had pulled off the perfect wedding, Fola was quietly setting the stage for the biggest shock of his life, not with noise, not with drama, but with quiet power. Because sometimes, the most dangerous storms are the ones that don't make a sound until it's too late. The wedding day finally came. The hall was beautifully decorated. Music played softly in the background. Guests filled the seats, smiling and whispering as they waited for the bride to arrive. Cameras were flashing, and everything looked perfect on the outside. Gani stood at the front, dressed in a fine tuxedo, smiling proudly. He looked like a man who had everything under control, happy, confident, and ready to start a new life. Soon, the bride entered, glowing in her white dress. People clapped as she walked down the aisle, and Gani's smile grew wider. To everyone watching, it looked like a fairy tale moment. But what they didn't know was that the real show hadn't started yet. Just as the priest opened his book to begin the ceremony, the lights in the hall suddenly went off. The room became quiet and dark. People looked around, confused. Then a large projector screen came on behind the altar. At first, nothing showed. Then, bold words appeared on the screen. "Paid by Fola Adeyemi." A hush fell over the crowd. Before anyone could ask questions, the screen began to flash images, receipts, one after the other. Payment for the venue, payment for the dress, for the cake, for the decorations, for the makeup artist. All the bills, all the evidence, each one with Fola's name clearly written. People began whispering. Some guests looked at each other, shocked. Gani's smile slowly disappeared. His hands began to shake. He turned to the bride, who looked just as confused as everyone else. Then came the final video. It was CCTV footage, clear and sharp. It showed Gani at home in the living room at night. Fola was asleep on the couch. Gani was holding her hand gently and then pressing her finger on a phone screen. The timestamp showed 2:14 a.m., the exact time the $60,000 had disappeared. Gasps echoed through the hall. Some people stood up in disbelief. The bride covered her mouth. Gani was frozen, his body stiff, his face pale, and his confidence completely gone. And just when it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, the doors opened. Fola walked in. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She walked in slowly, with quiet strength, wearing a simple dress, her head held high, and eyes full of fire. Everyone turned to look at her, even the priest. This was no longer just a wedding. This was the moment Gani would never forget. And Fola, she had just taken her power back, in front of every single person who thought she'd stay silent. Fola stood in the middle of the hall. The lights were back on now, but the room was still quiet. Everyone was watching her, waiting to see what she would do or say. She didn't look angry. She didn't look broken. She looked calm, too calm. She walked slowly toward the stage, where Gani and the bride were still standing, frozen. Gani looked like he wanted the ground to open up and swallow him. Someone handed Fola the microphone. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't scream or cry. She simply smiled. That calm, sharp smile that says, "I know exactly what I'm doing." She turned to the bride first. Everyone expected her to insult her or attack her with words. But instead, Fola said softly to the bride, "I wish peace." The room was so quiet, you could hear people breathing. Then she looked at Gani. He couldn't meet her eyes. She took a small step closer and spoke slowly so that every word could land clearly. "To the groom," she said, pausing for just a second. "Return my money within 72 hours, or this wedding becomes your debt auction." The moment she said it, gasps filled the room again. Some people looked confused. Others looked amazed. Gani's face turned even paler. His hands were trembling now. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Fola didn't wait for his response. She had said what she came to say, and she had said it with class, with power, with control. She didn't need to fight. She didn't need to cry. She had already won. Then, without another word, she slowly lowered the microphone and dropped it on the stage. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed through the hall, like a final stamp on everything she had just done. The guests remained silent. No one clapped. No one laughed. They just watched as Fola turned around and walked out with the same quiet confidence she walked in with. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her message was loud enough. In a room full of people, she had stood alone and still owned the moment. Not with noise, not with drama, but with grace and truth. Fola didn't just take the mic. She took back her power and left Gani standing there, no longer the proud groom, but a man exposed and completely undone by the woman he thought he could betray. As Fola walked out of the hall, calm and proud, she heard footsteps behind her. The bride was running after her, holding her long white dress in one hand, tears starting to form in her eyes. Her face was red from embarrassment, her voice shaky as she called out, "Please wait." Fola turned around slowly. She didn't speak yet. She let the bride talk first. "He told me you were just a jealous ex," the bride said, almost whispering. Her voice cracked. "He said you were crazy, that you couldn't move on." Fola looked at her, eyes steady and full of truth. Then she reached into her small handbag and pulled out a flash drive. She calmly held it out and placed it into the bride's hand. "There's everything you need to know," Fola said. "Every single thing." The bride looked confused, holding the flash drive with shaking fingers. Fola continued, her voice low but powerful. "That dress you're wearing? I paid for it. The hall where you just stood smiling. My money. Every flower, every chair, every spoon on every table. All mine." The bride stared at her, speechless. "I bought your entire wedding," Fola said, her words sharp but steady. "And now I'm cancelling the receipt." For a few seconds, the bride didn't move. She looked down at the flash drive, then back at the hall she just came from. It all began to sink in. The photos, the payments, the video of Ghani stealing from Fola. It wasn't just a moment of drama. It was real. Everything she had believed, everything she thought she knew, was a lie. She looked at Fola again, but this time with deep shame in her eyes. She didn't argue. She didn't defend him. She couldn't. The truth was too loud. Slowly, her fingers reached up to the ring on her hand, the beautiful ring Ghani had given her. Without saying a word, she took it off. No shouting, no screaming, just quiet realization. She held the ring in her palm for a moment, as if trying to understand what it really meant now. Then she walked back slowly toward the hall, head down, the ring in her hand, and her dream shattered. Fola didn't say another word. She had already spoken with her actions, and that was enough, because when truth walks in, lies have no place to hide. 3 days after the wedding disaster, Ghani showed up at Fola's doorstep. He looked tired, stressed, and much smaller than the man who once smiled with pride. He knocked softly at her door, as if he wasn't sure he should be there. When Fola opened the door and saw him standing there, she didn't look surprised. She had been expecting this moment. He gave her a weak smile and said, "Let's talk like adults." Fola didn't raise her voice or change her expression. She simply looked at him and replied calmly, "Adults don't steal." Ghani tried to explain. He said things had gotten out of hand. He said he had planned to return the money, that he just wanted to give the bride a dream wedding, and he didn't know how else to make it happen. He kept saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you." Fola listened without saying a word. When he finished, she walked into her living room, picked up an envelope from the table, and handed it to him. He opened it and froze. Inside was a court notice, official, clear and direct. "You'll return the money," she said, still calm. "Every dollar, with interest." Ghani's eyes widened. "Interest?" he repeated. "And a public apology," she added. His face turned red. "You're being ruthless," he snapped, trying to act like the victim. Fola gave him a small smile, the kind that showed she was no longer afraid. "No," she said. "I'm just finally using the backbone I built, funding yours." Ghani didn't know what to say. He looked at her, the same woman he once called his support, his hero, and realized he'd destroyed something he could never rebuild. Fola closed the door gently in his face. She didn't slam it. She didn't curse him. She simply ended the conversation like someone who had outgrown the person in front of her. Inside, she sat back on her couch. There were no tears, no anger, just peace. She had given him everything once, her time, her love, her money. But now, she was giving herself everything she truly deserved: respect, power, and justice. And this time, she wasn't waiting for anyone to hand it to her. She was taking it. The court case didn't take long. Fola had all the evidence, the receipts, the CCTV footage, the bank records. Ghani tried to defend himself, but it was useless. Everyone could see what he had done. The judge ruled in Fola's favor without hesitation. Ghani's accounts were frozen immediately. He was ordered to pay back every cent, with interest. The wedding, already broken by truth, was officially annulled. But Fola didn't just walk away with her money. She walked away with something far more powerful: her freedom, her confidence, her voice. and she knew exactly what to do next. Instead of just moving on quietly, Fola turned her pain into purpose. She used the money she recovered to build something meaningful, a mentorship center for women, a safe space where women who had been financially abused or betrayed could learn how to protect themselves, rebuild their lives, and grow stronger. She named it The Stronger Side. At the opening ceremony, the small hall was filled with women clapping, smiling, and feeling seen for the first time. Reporters came too. One of them walked up to Fola after her speech and asked, "Do you regret loving him after everything?" Fola paused. She smiled, not the smile of someone who was pretending to be okay, but the smile of a woman who had truly healed. She said softly, "No, because he built the stage where I finally found my voice." There was a silence in the room, the kind that comes when truth lands heavy. Then came a wave of applause. People weren't just clapping for what she said. They were clapping for everything she had become. Fola wasn't just the woman who was betrayed. She was the woman who rose after betrayal and lifted others with her. She could have stayed quiet. She could have disappeared. But instead, she became a voice, a guide, and a light for so many women walking the same dark path she had once walked alone. And now, her life was no longer tied to anyone's lies. It was built on her own truth. If this story gave you chills, don't just scroll. Share it. Someone out there needs to be reminded that betrayal isn't the end. It's the beginning of becoming unstoppable. Follow for more powerful stories that turn pain into purpose. Drop a heart in the comments if you believe women like Fola deserve the world, not just what's left of it.